Hello, and welcome to Otherworld Connections. I kind of feel like when I start talking, I do the intro all over again. Oh, yo. So here, today is Friday, the 26th of September, 3 minutes past 2 p.m. down here on the central plateau of the North Island of New Zealand. And where you are, it's possibly another day at another time, most likely in the evening. And we just got a hello. Those links won't open for me. Hey, it's Mitzi. Hey, Mitzi. Oh, those links won't open. Oh, I'm sorry. I will take full responsibility for that. You can check out the video of this. See my ugly mug on the screen on the Discord server, Studio A, or you can check out my YouTube channel. Yeah, I don't know why those links don't work. I don't know. But you're tuned in to Revolution Radio, the number one listener-supported radio station on the internet, on the whole internet and the whole world. So please consider helping to support our efforts and airtime by visiting the donation section on our website, revolution.radio. Please and thank you, and it's amazing. It's listener-supported. Thank you, listeners who support, and thank you for listening and supporting. That's pretty crazy, I reckon, and that's why I stay here, because I'm crazy too. Today, I am being very self-serving in this show. I'm going to be playing a video about how narcissism is developed in childhood. A bit of a break from, well, what I've been doing this week, which I want to share with you. I'm still working on my Oracle card deck, and I'm going to show you a little bit about where I'm at on the screen, if I can figure that out. There we go. So that's the best I could put it on the screen there. But this card I've been working on is card number 8, visualization training. And this is essentially, it has 72 cards like the tarot. It's an oracle card deck with the numbers actually corresponding to the content of the card. So it's very hardcore. This is going to take me forever to complete. But I'm not going to give up. And I'm using Otherworld Connections as a bit of a self-supporting, egg me on and providing content, because I'm spending a lot of time during the week on the card deck. So I have to sort of share the journey with you. Number 8, visualization training. So yes, this is called the deck is called the Family Bonding Oracle deck. And it is what it says on the tin. It's a toolkit for families to bond with their young children, to help them bond. And the point of it is this would be something that I would have created, obviously a very light version and a less informed version if I was still teaching, and still at university and maybe doing a PhD, dare I say. The point of the story is I'm creating the kind of thing that you'd want to see from your time in the matrix, getting qualifications to be an educator. I've stuck with my pedagogy, my study of child development and stuff. I've stuck with that, and I want to put it to good use, because all my time spent on that would be for naught, in my opinion, based on what I know now. So this is why I do this. And this is based on, poor parents having children and then not really having time to spend with them, or struggling to be able to make time. Well, besides forcing yourself to make time and digging deep, like, an extra set of repetitions on the old dumbbells there, besides that, which no one can help you with, you just have to motivate yourself to do. Besides that, well, this is the best thing that I could come up with, where it's something to kind of fast track parents understanding their children better and understanding what their needs are from their inner world, And this is about bringing that out. And what I mean by fast tracking is you may not know, because you don't have time, that your child is really interested in certain things that aren't available to them, based on your situation and your time. So you just need the intention to want to know more and to help more and to create more and do more and all that sort of thing, which is, I know, all parents want to do. So I'm just trying to fill that that niche with this card deck, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So I've been working on card number 8, which is visualization training. Full transparency here, I just want to go to the book if I can find it. There's a book from 1970 something called Become Somebody. And of course I can't find it. Oh my goodness. I was on a good flow there. Yeah, well anyway, it's called Becoming Somebody, that's why. Dr. Charles Schaefer. So if that rings a bell, I don't know, if you are a parent and you're interested in this sort of thing. Dr. Charles Schaefer book, Becoming Somebody, is pretty gangster. It's pretty gangster. Charles E. Schaefer, PhD. Creative activities for preschool children. It's all about, developing the brain, which is what's happening in, obviously in unison with the physicality, but it's developing, it's skyrocketing through in the preschool years. And it's obviously crucial, and he's got a whole bunch of activities and stuff that, with the pedagogy behind why he's got them there, to get those neural pathways going in the right direction, and and going firing on all cylinders. And he talks a bit about visualization. So visualization is good because of reasons, and those reasons. So I've actually got it up on the screen here. There we go, Becoming Somebody by Dr. Charles Schaefer. I'm struggling to center that image, but that's okay. Let's go like that. No, let's not do that. Okay, I've got it set up for the video, you see, that I'm about to play. I'm going to play... Oh, I better play it... Oh, wait, hang on. No, we've got heaps of time. The video is only 1 hour long, and this is a 2-hour show. So, slow down, Gino. Slow down. I would say I've had too much coffee, but I don't drink coffee anymore. Becoming Somebody by Dr. Charles Schaefer. Let's have a little look at the... Yeah, it's simply creative activities. This idea book is designed to aid parents and teachers in developing the preschool child's powers of creative thinking and self-expression. And if you think about creative thinking and self-expression, that's really what it is to be human. That's what sets us apart. And that's what puts us with the Creator, right? So this book is just, oh my goodness. This is such a good book for parents and teachers. Just for people that want to know how you're supposed to engage with a child. In an age when man is making increasing use of computers and television to do his thinking and picturing, it seems particularly important that adults understand the purpose, the value, and the techniques of stimulating individual thinking and unique self-expression in young children. Unique being the operative word there, because we are all unique. The ideas presented in this book are simple in nature and do not require special training or talent on the part of either adult or child. This is just about getting involved and getting in the flow. You don't really need to read the books if you just know that spending time with your kids is important, and just trying your best to spend more. But it's hard, right? All that is really needed is a willingness to explore new horizons, and both in your child and in yourself. And that is what I learned when I was teaching. I hadn't read any books like this before. But yes, you just have to be willing to explore new horizons. You will explore new horizons if you let your children lead the way. And it's like natural learning and developing and growth on both parties. Those links won't open, and maybe I'll copy and paste it. Okay, Brave browser won't let me play YouTube. Oh no, Mitzi. Brave browser. Monster383, here to save the day. Shout out to Monster383 and to all of management. Thank you so much for helping and supporting us. Probably a Mac permissions thing, like how you can't share screen on Discord. Tell me about it. I've been the bane of share screening on Discord since the onset of Revolution Radio on Discord. Metal Rabbit says hello. And I say, hello, Metal Rabbit! Metal Rabbit's in the house. Good to see you guys. You guys make me feel connected to outside of my property. So I appreciate you guys. Right. Becoming Somebody. Charles E. Schaefer, PhD. Just fantastic book. So that inspired this card. Visualization training. Now I'm going to read the blurb. Let's go back to the card. There we go. Visualization training. I think there's some more activity in the chat, so I'm just going to jump in on that. Hello to all from Eagle Flower. Hello, Eagle Flower. Monster383, am I on a Mac? No, I'm not. I'm on a PC. But yeah, I can try and send that link over again, but I think it's not that, is it? So, yes, visualization. Okay, not a Mac, yeah. But I think this is the second episode where I've got everything going up quite well, I believe. So that's good. Just picture dropping out. That's me closing windows that I shouldn't. Okay, so I'm going to talk about visualization training card. I'm just going to read that out. Oh wait, no, that's what I was going to do. This might create something out. So, oh no. Okay, let's try this link. Copy that. Go back. This is for Mitzi. Here we go. Let's try this one. Yes, this episode's called The Narcissist Needs You. That's just from the episode I did many moons ago called The Narcissist Needs You. I just, in a rush, put that there. Yeah. Maybe we all need a safari. Yes, indeed. That would be fantastic. Yeah. Safari with open bar. Indeed. Alright, so the video will be Otherworld Connections, how a child becomes a narcissist. I just found a video that personally I want to watch because I'm extending my knowledge on. I want to learn more about what makes a child become a narcissist. I want to talk about my understanding, and then we'll watch the video. But first, like I've said 1,000 times, now that I'm settling in, I'm just going to read to you about my card visualization training. So on the picture, on the face of the card, it says 8 visualization training, and it's got 2 children meditating, and they're facing a yurt, and above the yurt is the number 8. Okay, so the symbolism in the card is the yurt and the number 8. The rest makes it just the scene that it is. So the text for the back of the card is this: the yurt's open crown joins heaven and earth, a place where imagination is shaped and turned into action. And then I have a little prompt. Whether in a yurt, a tent, or a makeshift shelter, spend a night camping together in your garden or at a campsite. And I'll just keep reading through. The opening at the top of the yurt illustrates our bridge between heaven and earth. And the number 8 echoes this sense of connection. if we look at the shape of the number 8, it's kind of, two zeros on top of each other, sort of reflecting each other. When young children use their imagination, they grow in curiosity, creativity, and a natural sense of right and wrong. Imaginative play gives them ways to understand themselves, others, and the wider world. Camping under the stars, with the quiet of night and the flicker of flame, invites storytelling and wonder. The yurt's symbolism and the practice of camping remind young children to feel free to trust their personal ideas and express them. These same qualities can also be nurtured through simple visualization exercises. I just want to step into that. I think was it last week or the week before, Mitzi mentioned the vibe of campfire, sitting around the campfire and telling stories, and that she just sort of described the vibe. Mitzi described the vibe quite nicely, and I think that vibe and that camping kind of promotes that imagination and that curiosity and that creativity and imagination, and all that stuff is really important for the development of children, and that's why camping is so important, or it's just so awesome to do. So when your child is settled at bedtime and you're ready to switch off the light, ask them to close their eyes and imagine a TV screen. Ask them to turn on a channel and describe what they see. Suggest switching channels and follow along with their imagination. Keep questions open to extend what they see on the screen and follow their lead. Notice images, colours, characters that might jump out at you. They might offer clues. And for older children, for the older end of the spectrum of young children, age 6 to 7, you can invite them to tell you a short story. I think you can go younger than that, so I might actually delete that. I'm going to highlight that. I don't know if I like that, because if you have, for example, if you might have 3 children in your family, right? And say one is 6, and then the other's 3, and the other's 2. Well, if the 6-year-old's going to tell a story, then, it's just about, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm having trouble writing this stuff on the back of the card, in the sense that some of it's going to come naturally, right? I think stuff does need to be said. You kind of got to treat people like they don't know, but up to a point. And I don't know about age-specific stuff. I mean, what I'm saying is, if you have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, well, the 6-year-old's going to be slightly more developed to make this activity a bit more smarter for them, or more fun for them. And that will probably come out a short story, because you have a relationship, right? It's kind of dehumanizing the thing. If your 6-year-old imagines something and it's going to be interesting to you, then you're going to be like, oh, well, tell me more about it, and then they're going to turn it into a story. But then if you have a 3-year-old and the 3-year-old's turn, well, the 3-year-old's going to pick up on that from the 6-year-old, right? And that's how it works. So I don't know if you have to get too age specific, because I think that might be a little bit patronizing to parents. But sometimes, maybe there are some parents out there that mean well, want to do well, and they don't know anything, because they're just at work all the time, and they wish they weren't, but they have to be, or whatever, that sort of thing. Metal Rabbit tends to think that narcissists are born that way. I do think that is very much a possibility. I think in terms of the nurture aspect, I think that too little attention or too much attention creates narcissists. I think just like everything in life is about balance, and I think kids need a balanced amount of attention where they're not put up on this super high pedestal as like a trophy, and also that they're not just left to rot out in the cold kind of thing. And I think those two extremes create narcissism, create some kind of both are a type of neglect where they're kind of left on their own to figure certain things out internally, and that's when their brain starts correcting things to try and protect the self, because the self feels kind of abandoned. Eagle Flower says, certainly some come in with personality traits that could lead to being narcissistic. Yeah, I think my opinion is that I think there's like you guys are saying, there's a balance of perhaps nurture and nature. Maybe the secret is in how to steer them differently when exhibiting those tendencies. Yeah, something like that. So this video is going to be, well, really interesting for me. I'll probably play it in the second hour because I've already blah the first quarter of the show. But you guys have helped me. Appreciate all this engagement. And actually, you know what? I know you guys are talking to each other. I hope you don't mind me just blurting that out on air. Let me know. It's fun for me. It's engaging for me. So yes, going back to the visualization training. I think things like this, in terms of narcissism, I think like doing visualization, I think it kind of brings the idea of other people and like considering yourself alongside others. I think it brings that into the picture, something like visualization, and I think that's healthy. You can refine the request by suggesting a theme. For example, you could ask your child to switch to a funny channel, so you could just play along with it in the motion, or a scary channel, and pay attention as the description unfolds. And one thing I will say that I'm big on from what I learned when I was teaching is children's output when they come from a creative space. So if you've got them in a space where they're coming up with ideas, so they've turned on an imaginary TV screen, they're telling you what's on, well, that's where the sort of the child as a living tarot or a living oracle kind of comes out. And if you really are motivated to, and I think this is especially true for people that are freedom-minded and know a bit about what's right and what's wrong. And, people here on Revolution Radio, all you hosts and listeners that know about, the problems of the world and what the world should be like and that sort of thing. I think especially all you guys and gals, this is especially true for you all, that when you know all that, and you also know that, revering children is really important, and you engage with children, and then and you're interested in their creative output because you revere them. Well, in that space, there's a link to the other world, or to God, or to elsewhere, that provides, serendipity or synchronicity, or signs and symbols and messages from elsewhere to support you or to support the child, or both, as a reward. Like it really is a quid pro quo kind of thing, I believe, based on my experience when I was, being very idealistic like that when I was teaching. And, I harp on about it because I'm just spending a lot of time on this project. So yeah, the yurt. The yurt does, the yurt symbolizes number 8, and 8 symbolizes a yurt, which is kind of like that bridging heaven and earth, or say a spiritual with the material. And so, especially a yurt, and if you can actually like look out the top. This is again the same as like the train corresponding to goal setting, which we talked about I think last week. This card is like the yurt corresponding to like spiritual, like just being more like the human that we want to be and that we know we're supposed to be, like spiritually connected, creative, doing things for the greater good, being in service to others, all that sort of thing. Say, like how we should behave under natural law or something, being on the higher end of the spectrum and incorporating that into our life here on the material plane. That's what the yurt kind of symbolizes, and the number 8 does. And going camping for kids brings about the capacity, developing those capacities to live like that later in life, through living in the symbol. So that's what it's all about. Because also, what I was saying about children and their ideas and the place that they come from, that is really like that number 8, echoing in that world, that the ideas of the child are coming from heaven, or the from God's house or what have you above, and translating down here below. And as we're saying, camping is a kind of creative and storytelling kind of space to be in, and that's getting that flow going for the kids. And the more that they're in that flow, the more it becomes them, and that becomes, when they become the adult version, they're bringing that with them. So that's the way to go. And it's in partnership with the Writing a Train card, because the Writing a Train card is about goal setting and creating ideas and executing them. And so there's a correspondence there between the number 8 and the number 1. So yeah, pretty cool, huh? And Mitzi says it looks like a kiva, the yurt. Oh, I don't know, but that's I have to look at what a kiva is. But yeah, using I see what you mean. It's got it looks like it's got a different roof to a yurt. Oh, I just see that now. Gosh, I'm using AI, guys. I'm using AI to come up with the image, and I'm better off actually just learning how to paint and painting it, and that's what Julia, my wife, tells me. Because it's okay getting AI to do it, because obviously my idea is my idea and AI is just helping me make it happen. But man, to get the picture looking like something that some soulless psychopathic robot created is, it's so painful. And then you finally end up with something that you're overall happy with, and then Mitzi comes along and says it looks like a kiva. Which is true, fair enough. It doesn't quite look like a yurt, so I have to probably take that one back to the drawing board. Metal Rabbit saying, isn't it an oven? Let's have a look at it again now. It looks like there's flames coming out of it. Oh dear. It's a sacrificial pit. That's exactly what it is. Oh, that's going to take me a little while to get over. Oh, that's really funny. Isn't a kiva an oven? Or is it a small house of meditation? Come on, I need 1 point in the positive from Mitzi against Metal Rabbits. It looks like an oven. A small house for meditation, a hopi. Oh, okay, that's okay. Or a teepee. Okay, we can go with that. And a hopi and a teepee will have similar meanings. And here's the thing. Like, I guess even a tent would be similar, because it's living and congregating with others out in nature, right? And that's the crux of it. Brings out the like how in our ancient Indo-European past, how the heathens would live on the heath, like all that sort of stuff. That's how they became. Well, it's how they were really intuitive, psychic, and revered children, and invented fairy tales and that sort of thing. Middle rabbit, in proper meditation, you tend to burn yourself with guilt, so it becomes an oven. It's a good idea to take your bread dough in with you. Hairbrain, oh, I love it. I think it's fun. Children love teepees. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, they do. They really do. Middle rabbit always did. Yeah, Pat, Eagle Flower saying it almost sounds like you're talking about a sweat lodge. Well, it's funny how there are, well, we're not going around in circles, but we're finding similarities in the perception of the picture. So maybe I'll keep it at that. I don't know. But I think what I thought about doing is taking the image that AI gave me as a reference, because I chose, the ones I chose are for like the format, right? Oh, the two children sitting there with the yurt in the background looks quite nice, and the number 8, the layout makes sense, right? And I was thinking of maybe tracing over it and trying to make it my own. I don't know what you guys thought of that. Because, I mean, I don't think, honestly, if I was to draw it, I don't know if I'd finish it in this lifetime. But, you know, another point is about perfectionism is, you know, does it have to be perfect? Could I just do them? Could they just be sketches? Metal Rabbit says, yes, make it really organic. What I would do, which is kind of exploitative, is if I was still teaching, I'd get the kids to draw. Get the kids to draw them. That'd take a while, because I'd definitely be doing it in a way that wasn't just making them do my homework for me. Thinking too much about the show, I may have missed a little joke there, but that's okay. Don't leave me too far out of them. I like to laugh. Oh, really organic. Yeah, sweat into it. Okay, I get it. I thought you were talking about me drawing the pictures. Well, I would be sweating into it, that's for sure. Okay, what else was I going to say? Okay, so that's visualization training done. Okay, we'll go to another card that I've been working on. Here we go. There we are. And this one is called Orientation. Let's have a look. Orientation. So that's a schema in terms of early childhood development. It's a preferred style of learning, as in a type of, like a way that a child goes about things, or a way that child likes to play. And there's never just one on the go. There's usually multiple, and they do kind of overlap. But the orientation schema is like, one example is a child hanging upside down from the monkey bars and enjoying the view, because the orientation, the perspective has changed. Looking in the mirror, perhaps lying under the table, doing yoga poses to change where their head is in relationship to the environment, and observing the view upside down or round to the side. Orientation could also mean, like a feng shui kind of thing, like moving objects around and seeing how they look organized in a different way. So I'll just read you a little bit about this one. This is number 36, and these all do work with the numbers as well, which is pretty crazy. I'll shut that. Yeah, 36. Orientation. Orientation is a child's practice of finding direction, a seed for creating something significant later. Prioritize spaces for orientation play. Mirrors, torches, light and shadow, climbing, obstacles, or shifting body viewpoints. In pedagogy, a schema is a repeated pattern of play, a child's preferred way of learning. The orientation schema shows up as an urge to explore viewpoints, positions, and perspective. A child may climb stairs, lie beneath a table, peer into mirrors, or watch how light and shadow shift. The compass suggests finding direction. The camera points to growing self-awareness. Number 36 hints at the practical capacity to create something significant. This card asks you to notice that your child is drawn to spatial exploration. Supporting it will strengthen their sense of self, clarify their direction, and lay groundwork for meaningful future achievements. So yeah, it's a proper self-esteem builder. Just letting your child explore space, climbing things and doing yoga stuff and all the stuff we were saying before. When you have a quiet moment, bring out a world map or globe. And a magnifying glass is a suggested activity. A printed map is probably ideal. Let your child explore and ask friendly questions. Can you find our home? What is your favorite place? Move the activity to an art easel so your child can mark the map or create their own. Notice if they return to certain places, invent new ones, or change direction altogether. These are clues to your child's inner world and suggest ways to extend learning. And again, in this motion, if your child is really, really into the orientation schema, again, some people may have, this card may come out in a reading. This may come out just something for the parent to notice as a thing that's important to recognize as a preferred style of learning, and maybe the child needs more opportunity in that. And this is really good for like homeschoolers too. This is going to provide a lot of pedagogy for the parent, and also most importantly, like once you link it to the child as a thing that is real and evidential, then everyone's an educator. Everyone's a teacher. Everyone knows. It's just documenting. So this is going to be important. Maybe there's a child with self-esteem issues already at 3 years old. That does happen. Maybe even 4 years old. And maybe that child doesn't have enough opportunity or resources to exercise play through the orientation schema. And maybe that's all it takes is a map, a magnifying glass, a mirror, some space to play around outside, a ladder to climb, and so on and so forth. Maybe somehow or for some reason all of those opportunities are missing, and that can happen. I mean, parents are really busy. You guys are busy. You got to put food on the table, and the world is set up to make it so that's your main focus. So then the state can jump in and do the rest, as in prevent your child from, playing and, adapting to their own learning styles appropriately, preventing that from happening, because they've already prevented you from allowing that to happen because you're at work. So this is trying to fight back against that dynamic too. Yeah. So you can leave a map drawing materials and a magnifying glass in an accessible spot so your child can explore and investigate at their own pace. And I try to keep these suggestions like apartment and, small dwelling friendly, because that's possibly a lot of people. And that's probably, where people need it the most. People living in the inner city and, maybe. That's just a thought. Yep. And just going to say thank you to Mitzi. And yes, thank you, Mitzi. I appreciate that. She's said, a terrific show. Your idea with children's cards is really good. And I really do appreciate that, because I know you're a mother and an educator. And I really, really do appreciate that. A couple of mothers have appreciated the work that I do, and they are the reason I do keep going, or a big part of the reason. Obviously, my wife supporting me is the main reason. And yeah, just it means a lot to me to get that acknowledgement, because I don't want to be really doing stuff that is just like repels the whole of humanity against me. You never know, it could happen. So, where are we at? We're at 1:45. Where was I? I was just taken aback by that lovely comment. Alright, and so there are a lot of partnership cards here, and when I figure out that there's a card in partnership with that, then I'll go and work on that, but that's kind of where I'm at. But yes, orientation. So yeah, practicing orientation for a child is quite a there's not a lot that can stop a child from doing this, right? Like, kids are always in motion, so that's something, right? It's about recognizing a particular affinity to that, like always kind of turning the head or upside down or rolling around on the ground and stopping to look, that kind of thing. That's the thing to observe. And then that just shows that, that's a space where they're developing their self-esteem, their sense of self and their self-worth, and their, kind of individual, in the process of, coming online to 7 years old, becoming an individual. Self-awareness. And like we said at the beginning, orientation is a child's practice of finding direction, a seed for creating something significant later. That's what the number 36 kind of represents. 36 is like say you had a startup company that was really successful. That's like kind of a number 36 thing. So a child that has the orientation schema, supporting that is going to be supporting kind of the child coming up with big plans, big ideas, executing them, and making them really successful. Something significant. That's where the word significant comes. So that's an interesting thing there. So then also just anything to do with orientation, like cameras, magnifying glasses, maps, mirrors, binoculars, obviously viewing things, viewpoint things, light, torches, light tables, lots of stuff to play around with. And I think once you get into this kind of world, you kind of discover things about yourself as well. Things that you like. I think we kind of have our own schemas that translate later in life as well. And when people say they sort of found their passion later in life, well, I think that does connect to their childhood and what they had available to them, what types of exploration they were able to or allowed to do. Maybe some things you wanted to do you weren't allowed to do for whatever religious or, I don't know, mind control reasons there are out there to stop kids from doing things. But yeah, so these are all important to know, but it's hard to learn all that and actually have kids. Because once you have kids, well, the wheels are in motion, that's it. You're just you're on the road, you're on the journey. You don't have time to go and pick up a compass and a map and figure out how to use it. You're just on the go. And that's the other point of these cards is, if you're on the go and you've got a set of cards that you can just refer to, when you have a quiet moment, you just shuffle, and pull a card, like a reflective moment. I think a lot can be achieved there. Especially if you're one that's inclined. Obviously, it's going to be people that are in the market for tarot and oracle cards. And people that are in the market obviously know that there's something to them, right? Yes. So there's something else I was going to say about orientation. Oh, I've forgotten. Mitzi says, moss growing on the northern side of a tree shows north. Not sure about down under. Oh, interesting. So down under it would be moss growing on the southern side of a tree shows south. Definitely. I must check that out because we're in a mossy part of town. Well, we're in a part of town that gets a lot of rain and a lot of cloud and stuff like that, so, and a bit of cold. There's definitely moss around. I mean, we get moss like on the concrete, is what I'm saying. But we also get a lot of like lichens and stuff like that, so often a tree might be covered head to toe in lichen. But what we do get here, Mitzi, this is just an aside, is that in our part of the country we get like cherry trees and stuff grow. I don't know about the actual fruiting ones, but like Japanese cherry and stuff. And we've noticed that the trees are splitting open, and I was reading about it. And it's because they get a frost overnight, and then the sun hits them in the morning. And in New Zealand we have quite a strong sun, and if it's a sunny day, once the sun gets through and clears the fog and the mist, well, you can start getting a suntan, really, even in the middle of winter. And that makes the trees split open. And I just noticed on a walk at Cherry Grove, where there are cherry trees, they are taped up. Someone's gone and put tape on them. And I was just looking into that today, how the heck that works. But we have a cherry tree that needs taping up because it's kind of split open. Like sausage left too long in the frying pan. Oh. Mitzi says to do with the moss growing on the tree is because it grows on the side that gets the least sun in the northern hemisphere. That's north. That's correct. So if you had a house, you'd want to buy a house that had, which didn't always make sense to me, but you want a south-facing property in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, you want a north-facing property. It's a shame houses aren't two-dimensional, because you're still going to have a side of the house that doesn't catch the sun, right? Weirdly, our one's facing neither north nor south, and the sun goes in the kitchen and cooks any of the spices or herbs that I leave out on the shelf. I'm enjoying talking to you all. 2:53, which makes it, I think, 6 minutes to 11 p.m. Eastern Time over in America and elsewhere. I do wonder sometimes who else is listening and where they might be from. Well, possibly no one from Europe because it's about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. My apologies to all you Europeans out there. So yeah, you're tuned into Revolution Radio. It's the #1 listener-supported radio station in the whole world. It really is. And, we get support financially from all our homies, all the listeners. Well, I don't know about all of them, but, we get money. We get money to pay for the airtime. As in, not me, the station, right? To keep going. And everyone else is just on a voluntary basis. So if you go to revolution.radio, smack bang there on the page as you get in, it says thank you for your support. And that's true. Thank you for your support. You can become a patron by clicking the link, or you can make a donation to through DonorBox, which is an international alternative to PayPal. And you can make a direct payment if you're a North American resident. You can donate through cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. And you can put a check or money order in, payable to Revolution Radio in US dollars if you're coming from outside mainland US, and mailed to Terry Ackerman, 1793 North Eden Road, Allen, Michigan 49227. Anyway, the address is up there. And I think I was at Michigan. Oh, guys, that's really bad. I'm Googling that right now. MI state before anyone can ridicule me. That's Michigan. I got it right. I was thinking, second guessing and thinking Missouri. Because that's a state too, isn't it? What's Missouri? MS? Oh, anyway. Not a bad guess for a New Zealander who has been to America twice. Once when he was 3 years old to Los Angeles, Universal Studios. What was the other one? Oh. Knoxberry Farm, Huckleberry Farm, something like that. That was pretty cool. Oh, Missouri is MO. Mississippi is MS. Massachusetts, MA. Oh, okay, so there's heaps. Of course there's heaps. It's America, the greatest country on the planet. Yep, so I went to LA. And then about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I went to San Francisco, avoiding hypodermic needles and human feces on the street. It was fun. You tune into Revolution Radio. Thank you so much. We've reached the top of the hour. Stay tuned. We'll see you on the other side of the ad break. All right. Yes, welcome back to Otherworld Connections. So yeah, I've hit a world record in my world. There are 3 people watching on YouTube. I think that means one is me, one is Julia, and I think one is Mitzi, and one might be Diane, maybe. But yeah. Well, thank you for checking it out through YouTube. Yeah. Anyway, this is Otherworld Connections. It's about, well, all kinds of stuff, but it's about making connections with the other world, you know, getting in touch with our intuition, or getting aware and involved with that which we cannot see, which also includes, of course, you know, ethics and morals and right behavior, and that there is an objective morality. There is a right or wrong. And when you try and do the right thing and not do the wrong thing, then you get more in tune with that stuff that we cannot see. But bringing it back to 3D reality, I want to do a little bit on narcissism again. I better get into it right now, actually, because we will run out of time for the video. But this is going to bring us to the top of the hour, and it's just Dr. Ramani. She's one of the most famous people or most popular as well, who talks about dealing with narcissism. And yeah, her, like a lot of people, her advice is really good. It makes a lot of sense. I think you have to watch a fair bit for her to hear her talk the hard words and make the tough talk, but she does do it, and because that, I approve. So there she is. I'm going to go to the full screen there, and that should be up on the Discord. Let me double check, and then I'm going to hurry up and press play. No, it's not. Oh, that's okay. It should be there now. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to press play. So this is her video. Hard to find information about this. How does a child become a narcissist? My 2 cents is, well, we already talked about that. Too much attention or too much neglect. Needs to be a balance. We want positive neglect and positive attention. Both that are beneficial.
Here's
so here we
the
go.
deal. It is not your role to act as the punching bag and regulation tool for a person who is always managing rage and suspiciousness and is impulsive in their words and behavior. You are not responsible for their history. And frankly, you enduring their BS is not helping them either. This really is the question that everyone asks me. How? How did this happen? Why is my brother like this? And my sister and I are not. How is my oldest child a narcissist, but not their sibling? Why is anyone like this? Sometimes this question is a curiosity, and sometimes this question is a plea to help a person avoid it. Sometimes this question is asked to try and foster some empathy. So maybe if I just understand where this narcissism in this person comes from, then maybe I can navigate this relationship better. But most often, this question comes from parents who do not want to raise a narcissistic child, especially if the parent themselves had a narcissistic parent themselves. So in other words, they don't want this to be intergenerational. So the why of narcissism, and more specifically the where does it come from, is one of the most compelling questions that people ask me. Some people push back asking, why the hell, Dr. Ramani, are we spending so much damn time talking about the narcissist? We should talk more about what happens to those of us who are being harmed. And yep, I agree with you 100%. But part of understanding the harm is understanding the weapon. It's understanding what underlies what's bringing this harm into your life. And for many folks out there, especially parents who are raising children, and especially in those who are co-parenting with narcissistic people whom they are either still in a relationship with or whom they are co-parenting with and are no longer together with a narcissistic co-parent, there is a real desire to do anything to increase the odds of avoiding raising a narcissistic child. There are no guarantees. You can follow all of what is laid out in this series and still may end up seeing these patterns in an adult child. Now, this series breaks down something called the etiology or the origins of narcissism. No one of these reasons is a slam dunk. A person emerges as an adult narcissist. It's likely all of these reasons together and to varying degrees, like making a stew. This series is a guide on how not to parent, on how not to be present with a child, and can give us insight into the people around us, our children, or if you suspect you may have narcissistic patterns, some of the origins that underlie your personality, right? And I say that tongue in cheek. Obviously, I don't want you to raise a narcissistic child. Here's the thing. This series is absolutely not meant to serve as an excuse for narcissistic behavior. It's not. So please don't take it in that way. It is terrible that some of the things I'm going to talk about in this series would happen to someone. But lots of people have these backstories of all these different origins of narcissism and don't develop narcissistic personalities. Understanding what underlies the origins of narcissism may help set you free from the idea that the behavior that you are witnessing in a narcissistic relationship is your fault. And to the parents out there, you may in retrospect look back and say, damn, I've done some of the things you've talked about in this series, and here I have a narcissistic adult child. This series is also not meant to foist blame on you. Trust me when I tell you, lots of parents have done far, far worse, and their children are doing fine and are not narcissistic. I've seen solid, relatively on point, like loving parents have narcissistic children, and I've seen neglectful, unkind, selfish parents that have really empathic, respectful, and healthy children. Parenting is about sacrifice, being present, emotional availability, boundaries, consistency, but also a really large dose of luck, mixed in with something called your child's inborn temperament. Speaking of which, that's where we're going to start this series, by talking about something called temperament. Temperament is sort of the biological part of your personality. It's the part of our personality that we're kind of born with. And many of us can see, especially as we come into adulthood, that we have mannerisms and quirks that sometimes resemble those that are in other family members that we may not have even had that much contact with growing up or may have never even met. Temperament is likely, in large part, genetic, and we see it as early as infancy. Any of you watching this who has had more than one child knows darn well that your multiple babies had different temperaments from day one. Now, children with difficult or fussy temperaments have kind of pulled the short straw when it comes to temperament because they are harder to parent. They may cry more often, they may be harder to soothe, they may not sleep as well, they may act out behaviorally more, they may simply just be more demanding and thus have exhausted parents and caregivers. This can impact some of the other stuff we will talk about in this series, like mirroring and attachment. This difficult temperament may evolve with the child and may present with the child being very attention-seeking or physically active or remaining difficult to soothe or being, again, very reactive or being impulsive. These are kids that it's not a walk in the park. And over time, that child may have less than pleasant interactions with the world. They may be frequently scolded, hearing lots of, "Stop that, sit down, oh, why are you such a handful?" Or they may even face a greater likelihood of physical or abuse or verbal abuse by frustrated, overwhelmed parents. Not that those things are ever okay, but that's often why the parents go there. Some of these temperament interactions with the world can lay down some of the groundwork for later narcissism. The challenging temperament of the child, combined with less than optimal interactions with the world, all of this can leave the child feeling quite insecure and constantly trying to look to others for approval, but not being able to sort of contain that kind of acting out style. Now, Marsha Linehan, when she writes about borderline personality disorder, which is very closely related to narcissistic personality, suggested a sort of 2x2 framework. She puts biological vulnerability, temperament basically on one side, calls it high and low, and then she talks about the quality of the early environment, and she classifies that as invalidating or healthy. Now, as you can imagine, those with a higher biological vulnerability, these more sensitive temperaments, and a highly invalidating early environment, those are the people who are more likely to go on to develop maladaptive and dysregulated personality styles. This biological vulnerability takes in a little bit of territory. A lot of it includes temperament, as well as patterns such as reactivity and, of course, genetics. On the other side, those folks who don't have the biological vulnerability, who are raised in really validating and healthy early environments, well, that's the winner, folks, with a much greater probability of longer-term good mental health and a lower probability of a maladaptive personality style. This biological vulnerability that Dr. Linehan writes about often plays out as a reactive sensitivity that is present from early in life, which, like I said, then interacts with the child's early environment. This implies that even under the best of circumstances, in the face of having a biological vulnerability, it is quite possible that a narcissistic or otherwise pretty darn difficult and dysregulated and antagonistic and narcissistic adult could emerge. But the 1-2 punch is when the biological interacts with the environmental. For this reason, it may be that a child that is raised in a healthy, validating, loving home, but if the biological vulnerability is there, then there is still a risk of development of narcissism or related personality styles in adulthood. And that biological vulnerability may be why someone comes out of a very loving family and is still quite narcissistic. It's a developmental question, but it is possible that these difficult to soothe, reactive temperaments in children may be the forerunners of the behavioral issues that these kids will go on to have in school. Again, if kids behaving badly in school, the teachers are also going to be invalidating, or the kid may act out or be oppositional, and these behaviors may persist in adulthood. Many narcissistic adults throughout adulthood remain impulsive, behaviorally dysregulated, and oppositional. Temperament matters. It often sets the tone for where our adult personality lands. Now, some children with very challenging temperaments can ultimately grow up into regulated and lovely adults, and some really difficult and antagonistic adults had sweet temperaments. None of this is absolute, but it really comes down to probabilities. And it's a good bet that many people with narcissistic personalities reflect this multiplication between an invalidating, neglectful, inconsistent early environment and a biological vulnerability through their temperament. This temperament issue may also be why those who have known the narcissistic person the longest will say, I know they seem tough, but they've always been like this. Because in many ways, they have always been like this. The one thing we learn from the temperament element is that it is not a guarantee that a difficult temperament will evolve into adulthood narcissism, but it's a wake-up call that environment matters and may be the only way to steer a difficult temperament into a greater likelihood of a healthy adulthood space. It's a tall order, since difficult temperaments may raise more parenting issues, but again, awareness becomes key of how much more careful a parent may need to be with a difficult temperament child. One of the most difficult things about understanding narcissism is how diverse the pathways are to get to this narcissistic personality. At the core of all of these patterns is clearly something biological that we still don't fully understand. It largely appears to be a temperament by environment interaction, and that temperament is biologically determined and inborn.
Something's not right down on the farm. These aren't the rolling green hills you
will take on in this series are the environmental things that will often turn on that temperament and take it down a more narcissistic path. And even with the temperament and the environment interaction, that temperament may still not turn into adult narcissism. And in some cases, when we tell the story backwards, it just doesn't add up, meaning that we can't figure out quite what led to a person's narcissism. But in the vast majority of cases, the pieces do make sense. We can tell this story. So let's start from the very top with trauma. Why is trauma associated with narcissism? And what does a more post-traumatic narcissism look like? Please keep in mind, not all trauma histories are associated with narcissism, and not all narcissistic people have histories of trauma. Please remember that. But trauma, especially while the brain is still developing quickly, which is infancy, kind of through emerging adulthood, impacts how a person processes the world, how they feel the world. Post-trauma is characterized by patterns like vigilance and fear and threat perception and impulsivity and poorly managed emotion, either too much or too little, and re-experiencing and avoidance. Trauma can be seen in the histories of a not insignificant number of narcissistic individuals, and often shows up most often in people with vulnerable and sometimes malignant narcissistic patterns. In narcissistic people with trauma histories behind them, we can see the constant perceptions of threat to the point of what almost looks like paranoia, and this thin-skinned aggression in the face of provocation, the limited empathy, the impulsivity, all very much can track back to early trauma histories. Then, if the trauma was perpetrated by family members, especially parents or older siblings, or through witnessing domestic violence, then deviant, cruel behavior was also modeled by these people and may show up in the behavior of the narcissistic person in adulthood, who is in essence repeating what they saw. For folks with these histories, with trauma histories, if they go to therapy, ideally there is trauma-informed work happening, somatic work, the series of best practices in trauma. Unfortunately, once the therapeutic work becomes emotionally vulnerable, narcissistic folks tend to drop out of therapy and the beat goes on. Post-traumatic narcissistic patterns can be really problematic. Lots of suspiciousness, bordering on paranoia, aggressiveness, menace, manipulation. It does not feel safe for the other person in the relationship with the narcissistic person. The challenge is that when someone in a relationship with a narcissistic person who has a trauma history learns that that trauma history may have contributed to that person's narcissistic personality pattern, there are tons and tons of cognitive dissonance. First, the trauma actually makes sense as a way to make sense of such a hostile and difficult pattern. And the idea that if you stepped away, you would be one more person who is harming them. But also, if you stand up to them, that you have to endure their rage, and that can feel scary. Many times, when a person recognizes that a partner or other significant person in their life has a trauma history, there's a strong sense of guilt that in some ways it may just have to be your lot in life to have to just put up and shut up because they, the narcissistic person, had their own burdens to carry, and you don't want to add to that. But here's the deal. It is not your role to act as the punching bag and regulation tool for a person who is always managing rage and suspiciousness and is impulsive in their words and behavior. You are not responsible for their history, and frankly, you enduring their BS is not helping them either, though they will lash out at you in a way that may leave you feeling as though you have done something wrong for not enduring their behavior. You can't win. And if they are not getting help, such as therapy, and instead are getting through their days by bullying you and everyone else, again, not acceptable. It is painful to know that their histories and legacies have harmed them so much. That's an empathic reaction. And being an adult, though, for them means making the choice to do something about it. For them to take responsibility, to recognize that their behavior is unacceptable, they have to recognize that and then grow up and take that responsibility. Or they just have to be accountable and leave relationships where they are doing so much harm. They don't get to have it both ways. It can get very tricky if they use their histories in a manipulative manner, especially when they recognize that such a strategy is working. They'll say things like, I had such a tough childhood. I watched my dad beat up my mom. I was assaulted. And hearing those things keeps you stuck. After a while, they know they can pull out that card and get you to not leave or hold them behaviorally accountable or just put up with them. That's not a relationship, folks. That is psychological imprisonment. Of all the narcissistic backstories, or origins backstories, I should say, I do believe that this results in some of the more severe narcissistic symptomatology for people who do have narcissistic personalities, and results in the most cognitive dissonance for survivors. But there's one last thing you need to remember. The majority of people who endure trauma in childhood and adolescence do not develop adult narcissistic personalities. So it's not a given. And many of those folks who have experienced trauma either did the hard work of therapy or may have had very, very different temperaments. However, when a person's narcissistic behavior has trauma in the backstory, it makes it very hard for narcissistic abuse survivors and for the person with the narcissistic personality style as well. It's just a tough one. There are therapists out there who are very, very skilled and specialized at trauma work, and it is painful, difficult work, but it's important work. If you believe you have a narcissistic personality style and you think it relates to your trauma history, please look into it, because lashing out at others because of that is not a path forward to you. And addressing the trauma is essential to living a more whole life. If you are in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic and has an earlier life history of trauma, ensure you have supports and ideally therapy for yourself. If you're concerned that there are safety issues in this relationship, we will have resources for that in the video notes, and your staying in the relationship may help you in the way of not having to grapple with the guilt. But let me tell you, that's not good for you, because it's not doing you, the other person, and others who are caught in the blast zone of this relationship and of this person's behavior any favors. I will say it again and again. There is no excuse for abuse. There are explanations, but there's no excuse. There is no backstory that makes it okay. These explanations may give us a structure within which to understand it, but not to sign off on it. So understanding origin, I know it's something that's so compelling, but that origin cannot be used as a tool of self-blame for survivors or an excuse for behavior by people who are narcissistic. All of this is about stepping up and taking responsibility, painful as it may be. So please drop a comment. What do you think? Do you think that coming from chaotic family systems just begets more narcissism? Do you think narcissism is genetic? Do you think everyone who comes from one of these family systems is doomed to become narcissistic?
At Woolworths, our potatoes are big on flavour, so they're the perfect side dish. Like our pre-packed white,
You're just some ads coming through, won't be a moment.
Sometimes wonder if a person's family is like this, pure chaos and just lots of lies, deceit, you name it, doesn't it just follow that this is genetic? If a person's parent or parents or other family members are narcissistic, that these patterns might be observed in grandparents or aunts and uncles or siblings, then doesn't that just argue that all of this is genetic? We don't know, but probably not. A lot of what comprises narcissistic behavior and narcissistic beliefs is a byproduct of observation and learning and being immersed in behavioral patterns that may not be normative, but may be seen or observed in many family members in a particular family. Most people do what they see, or I shouldn't say most, many people do what they see, but not all of us do, thank goodness, right? The genetic evidence on psychopathy, that's a bit more convincing than what we see for other personality issues. But even in psychopathy, the thing that's being sort of genetically inherited isn't the psychopathy per se, but the ingredients of the psychopathy, the dysregulation, the impulsivity, perhaps the lack of empathy, perhaps issues related to mirror neurons. This is all an evolving field, but it's not like, ooh, there's a psychopathy gene, right? The genetic versus the environmental issues get mixed up again when we consider other co-occurring mental health and mental illness issues, patterns that we often see co-occur with narcissistic personalities. So this could be things like the presence of mood disorders, such as depression and bipolar disorder and addiction. Now, those patterns, mood disorders and addiction, those have all been shown to be heritable. And when you have these parallel patterns, that they're parallel to personality issues like dysregulated behavior, impulsivity, variable empathy, and then other patterns like denial, problems with self-awareness. When you have this big mishmash of major mental illness and these personality issues, teasing all of this out becomes really, really difficult because there's just lots of chaos, right? So the really, really difficult and challenging piece, and this may apply to more than a few of you, is that you come from a family in which deviant, dysregulated, antagonistic, just plain chaotic patterns were happening all around you and harming you. And you didn't take that path, or your siblings didn't. You actually you didn't end up making your own family that's chaotic and all of that, but instead you ended up as an empathic, productive, well-regulated adult. Though I will say that many people who originate from chaotic families, if they don't become chaotic themselves, they end up quite anxious as adults. Now, a narcissistic family system or a psychopathic family system sort of has its own weather, right? It has its own culture. This may look different in different families, right? In different families, we might see families where rules are regularly broken, even laws might be regularly broken. Oppositionality and just saying no is tolerated. Behaviors such as infidelity or lying are observed across multiple family members. Physical abuse or violence may occur regularly. Substance use is present in multiple family members. Domestic violence is observed. Manipulative, sort of ragey behavior is excused. These systems, these narcissistic family systems get to keep working because the people with the antagonistic patterns hold most of the power in the system. And for no other reason usually but fear. Some people walk on eggshells and others enable it, saying things like, well, families stick together, family is family, family loyalty, that sort of thing. Survival in these kinds of antagonistic family cultures often comes through escape, but also by building resilience in whatever way you can, going to therapy, setting boundaries. But family cultures like this often try to pull people back into them. And if you manage to escape and create a healthier life outside of that chaotic family system that you came from, then pulling you back through guilt is a very common play in these families, with family members the enablers, and the narcissist asking for money or a place to stay, and that you somehow owe, continuing to give to the family system. Another thing happens in antagonistic family systems. In many cases, there's basically nobody minding the store, meaning that children in the environment are not kept safe. That can be things like routines and schedules and expectations are lacking. And even if there is a kind person in this chaotic family system, they are often living in fear or trauma or stress, and they can't adequately caregive the children. And exposure to these environments can really disrupt attachment processes. In some cases, this chaos results in what are called traumatogenic or unsafe environments in which strangers or unsafe people who are part of the system are then able to easily enter into these environments, may even prey upon children in these environments, again, because the chaos means that nobody is keeping an eye out for the vulnerable people in the system. And then, as you can imagine, some children at risk, because of being in that risky environment in their family, they may be more vulnerable to trauma even outside of the home and may not have someone monitoring their safety and accountability as they get older, middle school, adolescence, that kind of thing. These are children who may then be more vulnerable to engaging in experimental drug use, largely because it's probably happening in the family. They may run away, they may not do as well in school, they may act out in school. So the legacies created by these dysfunctional, abusive, narcissistic, antagonistic environments radiate outward and harm the people who are born into them. Sometimes these patterns replicate across generations. When we are exposed to anything, rage, dishonesty, betrayal, observing or experiencing various forms of abuse, substance use, some people become what's called habituated to it. What I'm basically saying is that basically people almost become accustomed to seeing these things and then may not even take as much notice of it when it happens in other places. It's almost like an acculturation process, right? For example, if they see this kind of behavior in relationships or workplaces, and there's a danger to getting habituated or accustomed to these patterns. Many people who are from ragey, abusive families have said, the yelling and the abuse was normative in my family. It wasn't okay, but it also meant that when I got into adulthood, I didn't notice that kind of ragey behavior as much when I entered other relationships. Yes, some people say they're more sensitive to it, but a lot of people say, I'm not noticing it as much. I was once chatting with a friend of mine, and she happened to be dating a ragey narcissist. I asked her as gently as I could, doesn't his yelling scare you? Because I got to tell you, it scared the hell out of me. And she said, I know he yells, but he isn't yelling at me. And I grew up with a father who was way more rageful and yelling. And I knew my dad loved me. And so yelling doesn't put me off. I thought it was actually a very interesting justification. I got to tell you, I still worry about her. I'd love to hear it from you. Drop a comment. Did you grow up with a narcissistic family member? And did the abuse in the family become so normative that you didn't notice it as much when it happened in other relationships? Keep in mind, for some of you, it might mean you notice it more. I'm somebody who does not do well. Somebody's yelling and screaming. I actually tend to sort of shake like a feather. Now, however, there's another side to this. Our nervous systems don't like yelling and fear and violence and anger happening around us, which is why in people who grew up in these systems, there is sort of a permanent eggshell walking. It's the hypervigilance and the hyperarousal that's observed in people who have long-term traumatic stress reactions. There's a sort of a jumpiness, a discomfort, an anxiety at saying and doing the wrong thing, and a tendency for self-blame. Even when a person is in a calm and safe environment, the hypervigilance and that sort of jitteriness persists. And in the world of narcissistic abuse, This can get this can get complicated in multiple ways. For people who may get into a relationship with someone who is narcissistically or psychopathically abusive in adulthood, and they come to find out that the toxic person they are in a relationship with came from one of these adverse and chaotic environments, the tendency is to want to save them, rescue them, help them, make justifications, not want to punish them for their difficult backstory. That's understandable. It's compassionate, it's empathic, and it often doesn't work. Sadly, we do need to make decisions about people on the basis of their behavior, their present behavior. You can't be the therapist to someone that you are in a relationship with. Justifying and waiting for change is more likely to result in more harm to you. If you came from a family like this and aren't like this, but still struggle with anxiety, attachment, and feeling not good enough, then you do often carry a greater vulnerability to trauma bonding and getting into a relationship that replicates these cycles again. Understanding these kinds of risk factors and your history is essential. That's why it's so important to pace relationships really slowly. Give yourself time to adjust, to get to know yourself, to value yourself. And then on top of that, self-compassion becomes absolutely essential. And finally, a point for everyone to remember. While our families obviously have in many ways shaped us developmentally, they don't define us. There are people who emerge from systems like this with some real core wounds and with rich empathic hearts. Simply being from a psychopathic or a narcissistic or a chaotic or an antagonistic family system absolutely does not mean that all hope is lost. We can't justify bad behavior in present time on the behalf of that family of origin issue, but we also can't. We wouldn't reject people out of hand on this behalf. That history doesn't damn everyone. Adult behavior is the adult's responsibility. Our histories create vulnerabilities, but they are not excuses for bad behavior. Now, in the 1950s, a psychiatrist named John Bowlby and a psychologist named Mary Ainsworth laid out a developmental model called attachment theory. This model focused on our earliest relationships, typically with parents or other early primary caregivers. They showed that a child needs a solid, secure, consistent relationship with just one solid, safe, secure, and available adult caregiver to set the foundation for normal development. That adult becomes a sort of base camp for the child. And if the child is at all stressed, where do they want to be? They want to be near their safe base. These researchers also focused on understanding how infants reacted to a separation, even a brief separation, from their primary caregiver, or to the moments when their caregiver wasn't readily available. Now, in their definition, a good caregiver is someone who is available, consistent, and responsive. And the child wants to know that the caregiver is close and connected. If a caregiver is not available or responsive, then the child will be anxious and will search their environment or will cry or do something else to call out for the caregiver. If the caregiver does not show up, then the baby will experience despair. Now, I would love to hear, though, drop a comment if you ever remember learning about attachment, maybe in a psychology class, maybe in other things that you've read. It'd be interesting to know how many of us already know about this idea of attachment theory. Now, it's normal for young children to become upset when their caregiver leaves. It's also normal for a child to be calmed down rather quickly by that caregiver when they return. There is lots of information out there on attachment theory if you want to learn more. For example, about something called the strange situation experiment, etc. It's really interesting stuff. You may have learned about it in school. But suffice it to say, a child, all children, need a consistent, safe person in their lives to develop a healthy sense of self and a healthy psychological development. Bowlby and Ainsworth and other researchers subsequent to them describe different attachment styles, including a secure attachment, anxious attachment, and avoidant attachment. Since then, others have also added what's called the disorganized attachment style. Now, secure attachment is what we see when we see a child who is a little sad when their parent leaves, but then they're soothed by whomever the other caregivers might be. It might be a babysitter or a teacher. And then when the parent comes back to them, the child is quickly soothed by their parent's return. The anxious attachment style is when the child becomes extremely rattled and upset when the parent departs. And it's hard to soothe the child even when the parent comes back. In the anxious attachment style, the child will go back and forth between wanting to be comforted and then wanting to punish the parent for leaving. Now, for those of you dealing with narcissistic relationships in adulthood, does that sound familiar? The push-pull of them, wanting you to reassure them and then wanting to punish you? Definitely drop in a comment if you've seen that kind of anxious attachment style play out in adulthood. Now, finally, in the avoidant attachment pattern, children do not get too upset when the parent leaves. And when their parent returns, they actively avoid them. Now, researchers Cynthia Hazan and Philip Shaver have also talked about adult attachment styles. Securely attached adults are sad when they have to say goodbye to their loved ones or partners, especially to their partners. And then they're genuinely happy and elevated when they come back together with their partner. Avoidant adults, they don't really care that much about close relationships. And they don't want to be dependent or don't really care about other people. So they don't care about goodbye and they don't really care about hello. But when it comes to narcissistic relationships, it really appears to relate most closely to how Shaver and Hazan write about anxiously attached adults. Anxiously attached adults are always worried that other people do not love them and become frustrated when their needs are not met. People who are narcissistic most often look anxiously attached. They are always worried that whomever they proclaim to love will not return their love, and they get rageful when their needs are not met. So then comes that punitive part. In a way, the anxiously attached adult mirrors their punitive anger at their caregiver from childhood, right? They're still mad about that. They take it out in the adult relationship. The anxiously attached adult is often inconsistent, cold, rejecting, and unempathic with their partners, and they're upset when their needs don't get met. This anxious attachment style can also sort of result in an obsessive style that is very much a signature of the narcissistic relationship. Narcissistic folks are caught in a constant push-pull in their relationships, and that's why we see the constant and dramatic arguments, breaking up and getting back together. Lots of anxiety, begging the partner to come back, the hoovering. It's that anxious attachment come to life in its adult form. And that's really what a lot of narcissistic relationships look like. In a lot of the theoretical research on adult narcissism, there is definitely the suggestion that many, if not most, narcissistic people have an anxious attachment style. Lots of volatility. They definitely don't do well with goodbyes. They also don't do well with hellos, especially if there's been a separation. In a way, the narcissistic adult is still the angry child that can't believe that you left home, even if it's just to go to work, right? And there's lots of punitive acting out in the relationship. That means that people who do therapy with narcissistic people try to address that anxious attachment by being consistently available at that session time, right? The consistent available parent. Now, narcissistic clients often try to take advantage of that. They will frequently try to touch base with or even bother the therapist in between sessions. They want to have access to them all the time. So the work becomes letting the client know, I am here for you every week at this time. This is your time. But I can't be there for you all the time throughout the week. Setting that boundary and setting the consistency basically alongside the healthy boundaries they never had.
You're not going to believe what happened. Tell me everything. I'll show you on Monday.com.
Oh, that's just some ads playing on the video. Be right back.
Really ever works with the narcissistic client, which is actually why narcissistic clients often burn therapists out. The therapist keeps setting boundaries, the client keeps claiming to have emergencies, or they keep sending messages or communications to the therapist keeps setting higher boundaries, and either the client gets frustrated that they cannot always use the therapist as a pacifier, and then they drop out of therapy, or the therapist burns out altogether and either drops the client or, in some cases, literally stops being a therapist. So a parent doesn't really have the same option, but you could see the effect that that child might have had on a parent as well. Now, where do anxious attachments come from? Now, lots of places. Unavailable caregivers in childhood, and this can be for such a wide range of reasons. Perhaps the caregivers are actually gone and there is no good substitute. It could be due to chaos in the household, parents who are preoccupied with stressors, parents who are egocentric, parents who are just immersed in their own lives and interests and are maybe perhaps narcissistic themselves and don't want to be bothered with children. The child, in these cases, where there's inconsistent parents, never gets that secure base to return to, never learns to feel safe and secure in the world, and may feel a constant sense of being left or abandoned, and then has difficulty regulating or soothing themselves. And this extends into adult relationships. And in adult relationships, there can be lots of anxiety about abandonment, a neediness or a clinginess, and rage at the partner because of this anxiety, and to punish them for not being available to them all the time. Now, here's an interesting paradox. When people recognize that anxious attachment is a big part of what may underlie adult narcissistic styles, becomes sort of an interesting setup for cognitive dissonance for the person who's in the relationship with the narcissistic person. Because then the rescuer hat goes on. And the belief is that if I am always there for them, and I am now the new consistent parent, and I'm available, and I'm loving, then I can fix their anxious attachment. Nope, not going to happen. You can't, and frankly, it's not your job. It's not your place or need as a partner to reparent your partner. Their work is to do the hard work of therapy and to work through this in therapy, as uncomfortable as it may be. You are not their abandoning, unavailable parent, and nothing you can say or do is going to change that. And as you can see, if you fall into this trauma-bonded, I am going to fix this attachment issue for you role, You, in essence, have, instead of being a partner, really become the parent of a tantruming, dysregulated child, again, instead of being an adult partner to another adult. Now, the attachment origin model of narcissism is one of the more robust and likely useful explanatory models. It explains why we see narcissistic personality across all groups, all over the world, and across even socioeconomic groups. For example, there may be different reasons why a wealthy parent is not available to a child compared to why a person of fewer economic resources may not be available to a child, but the child experiences it the same way, and it can have similar impacts. It also explains the challenges that we see that narcissistic people have with both intimacy and empathy. It explains all of the challenges with dysregulation and the incapacity to engage in something called self-soothing. It explains the abandonment fears and the anger that narcissistic people often display, not just when you say goodbye, but even when you reconnect. It explains the vindictiveness and the punitiveness of these relationships. So it's a theory that really does kind of reach into all the kinds of corners of narcissism and makes sense of a lot of it. So let's say you're a parent still raising a child and you don't want to raise a narcissistic child. What do? Try to be consistent, available, responsive, and present. Be that secure base for your child. The younger and the more consistently this happens, the better. As I said, you are base camp and the safe place that lets the child get more bold and courageous with regard to exploring their world. Number 2, you got to put down the devices and just be with them. You got to learn to reflect their emotions. Have good routines around goodbyes and hellos. Goodbyes and hellos for children can be rather challenging and chaotic moments for a child. Whatever you do, you can have a song, you can have a routine, you can have a little pinky handshake, and that you can then harness at the time that you can use at the time of hello and of goodbye to make those sort of soothing times. Make those reunions very present, right? It's easy to say, okay, hey, it's good to see you again. All right, let's get in the car. Be present at hello, be present at goodbye, but have that hello routine and that goodbye routine. Be aware of your own attachment style and attachment issues, as those are going to play a role in how you are present with your own child. For example, an anxiously attached parent may tend to be a little bit more hovery and not allow their child enough leeway to safely explore. Or an anxiously attached parent may portray the world to be a dangerous place to a child because of their own anxieties. Number 5, remember that it only takes one securely attached person in a child's life to help them feel securely attached. You may be concerned because you have a difficult or a narcissistic co-parent. It's okay. A child just needs one secure base.
All right, we'll leave it at that. A child needs one consistent, secure base. I think that's the moral of the story there for that. I got a little bit lost on the hellos and goodbyes thing, but I don't know. I'm keen to flesh out in the chat for a minute or two if you're still around. Otherwise, hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I love you all. Thank you, Mitzi, Eagle Flower, Monster383, Pat Rabbit, aka Metal Rabbit. Hey, I love you guys, and hey, we'll catch you in the next one, eh? Good night, sleep tight, and all the best. Might see you in the chat here on the Discord. Take care. Bye-bye.